Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're an IB diploma program history student, you already know that understanding the mechanics of exactly how and why societies expand is absolutely crucial for your essays. So today, we're going to break down the mechanics, the socioeconomic impacts, and the really intense historical debates surrounding medieval maritime expansion in Northwest Europe. We're getting right into the hard evidence and the historiographical perspectives you need to really elevate your arguments.
Okay, let's literally dive right in by establishing the sheer, sudden scale of this historical phenomenon. We are looking at a massive paradigm shift here. It took localized coastal seafaring and completely transformed it into this unprecedented, shocking wave of transatlantic expansion. We're talking about moving from simple river transit to an absolute explosion of blue water conquests that permanently changed the map of the world. So, how did this happen so incredibly fast?
Well, to help structure your essay arguments, here is our analytical roadmap for today. We'll be covering from hides to hulls, the clinker-built revolution, economics of the sail, mastering the open ocean, and finally the historiography debate.
Let's start with Section 1, from hides to hulls, focusing on continuity and change.
We absolutely have to start with our baseline, because it brilliantly illustrates the paradigm shift we're dealing with. For the longest time, the continuity, the baseline for early populations, was completely constrained. Early vessels were literally just animal hides stretched over light wooden frames. Now, these were great for local rivers or maybe some nearshore fishing, but entirely unviable for open ocean transit. The massive change came with advancements in wood engineering. By scaling up hull sizes using actual timber, societies unlocked true transatlantic capability. Making that leap to engineered wood was the absolute foundation of this era's expansion.
Moving right along to Section 2, the clinker-built revolution and ship architecture.
Let's examine the specific technological significance of these wooden hulls, because they weren't just standard boats. Think about the specific architecture of the clinker-built or lapstrake method. Instead of flat edge-to-edge joints, builders used overlapping wooden planks, usually oak or pine, and secured them with clenched iron rivets. And why is this a game changer? Well, it completely solved the primary problem of structural stress on the open water. This overlapping design allowed the entire hull to twist and flex with the wave mechanics, so rather than snapping under the immense pressure of a storm, the ship actually absorbed the Atlantic's energy.
But the really crucial point here is that this wasn't just about surviving the ocean. It was about what you could do once you reached the other side. When you break down the specs, it's wild. Minimal internal framing kept the ships incredibly lightweight, with lower planks just 2 to 3 centimeters thick. That created a remarkably shallow draft, meaning they had dual capability. They could survive open ocean crossings and then sail directly up shallow European river networks to strike inland cities like Paris and London. And because they required absolutely zero docks, they could beach instantly, yielding total tactical surprise.
Let's quantify that tactical advantage. Consider the famous Oseberg ship, which was 21.5 meters long, but lightweight enough that local populations could collectively haul it ashore. It carried 15 oar holes per side, accommodating a compact, highly mobile combat unit of about 30 to 40 armed warriors. To put that into perspective, a fleet of just 15 ships could instantly drop over 500 armed troops onto an undefended coast way before regional defenses could even begin to mobilize. It was essentially a blitzkrieg from the sea.
Okay, Section 3, Economics of the Sail and the Human Cost. A hull alone doesn't cross an ocean, so let's see how this builds into a complex socioeconomic reality.
Around the late 8th century, the adoption of the square sail revolutionized travel. It entirely bypassed human stamina limits and drastically reduced the massive cargo space you'd normally need to hold food and water for multi-shift rowing crews, maximizing their travel range. But you really have to ask, what was the human cost of a single sail? Because it carried a massive, grim price tag back home. Producing just one of these monumental 60 to 90 square meter water-resistant sails required such intense labor that it essentially transformed domestic agriculture. It necessitated breeding specific dual-coated sheep just for the wool. The sheer industrial demand for fleet sails required thousands of hours of textile labor, completely altering the domestic economy to support it. And tragically, it drove a shift toward a brutal slave-run plantation economy just to meet those production quotas.
If you are examining historical significance and cause and effect for your IB papers, historian Neil Price provides a crucial historiographical link on this exact point. He argues that the technological triumph of the sail directly fueled this horrific slave economy.
The need to capture slave labor, often referred to as thralls, was actually a primary driver for the maritime raiding itself. They raided to capture labor, to build more sails, to launch more raids. It was a dark, totally self-sustaining loop.
Section 4. Mastering the open ocean, focusing on stability and safety.
Because having a massive sail and a sturdy hull wasn't quite enough to cross the open Atlantic, navigators needed absolute safety and direction to survive the elements. This brings us to a critical design element, the freeboard. That's the vertical distance from the waterline to the top of the upper deck. Early low freeboard vessels risked catastrophic swamping. You see, when wind pressure hits a massive square sail, it causes heeling or tilting. In a low vessel, that means taking on catastrophic amounts of water during an open sea storm. The fix? Later ocean-going designs simply raised the freeboard. This allowed ships to tilt safely under heavy winds without flooding, unlocking those treacherous blue water routes to places like Iceland, Greenland, and North America.
But even with a safe ship, how do you navigate blind across the ocean without any coastal landmarks? The answer is the sun compass. This is an incredibly brilliant analog tool. Navigators etched horizon lines onto a wooden dial. By tracking the sun's shadow path against a central pin, known as a gnomon, they could accurately calculate cardinal directions. This allowed them to maintain a highly stable latitudinal heading, even pushing through the thick ocean fog that so often plagues the North Atlantic.
Which brings us to our final section, the historiography debate, catalyst or vehicle.
We've seen the incredible mechanics of the technology and its grim socioeconomic costs. So now we arrive at the climax of our analysis. For your IB history essays, you know you can't just list facts. You must balance differing historical viewpoints impartially. We're looking at two major perspectives here. Perspective A is technological determinism, the idea that the technology was the catalyst, essentially a push factor forcing society outward. Perspective B focuses on socio-economic drivers, arguing that societal issues pulled the technology into use, making the ship merely a vehicle for pre-existing ambitions.
This debate breaks down perfectly between two key historians. Neil Price is our primary advocate for the push factor. He argues that the sudden union of clinker hulls, sails, and shallow drafts created such unprecedented mobility that it acted as the primary catalyst. It basically unlocked a latent desire for expansion. Without the tech, they stay home. On the flip side, David Griffiths contends that the technology was the means, not the cause. He points to clear evidence of piracy in Northwest Europe long before the infamous raid of 793 CE. Griffiths argues that internal domestic pressures, things like political fragmentation, overpopulation, and a cultural need for honor-bound wealth accumulation, were the real drivers. They simply utilized these new clinker-built ships as the perfect vehicle for their pre-existing goals.
As we conclude this explainer, I want to leave you with this final historiographical question to anchor your next thesis. Was the clinker-built ship the spark that ignited the fire of medieval expansion, or was it just the wood that fed an already burning flame of socio-economic pressure? Think critically about the evidence on both sides, weigh the human costs of innovation, and apply these perspectives to your own historical arguments. Thanks for learning with me today, and good luck with those essays.